Welcome to this week's edition of Immigration for HR. I'm Sam Adair with the law firm of Graham Adair, and I'm joined today, as always, by my partner, Chad Graham. Chad, thanks for being here.
Hey, guys.
So we're here today to talk about a pretty hot topic in employment-based immigration, which is Day One CPT. And Chad, you can correct me, but I do not believe that Day One CPT has anything to do with ChatGPT or any type of AI. Is that correct?
You are correct.
Okay, cool. Thanks for clarifying that. So we've been talking a lot about the H1B Lottery recently and just kind of the crazy numbers that we saw, the incredibly low selection rate as a result of those numbers. Chad, can you just give us a quick background on what the H1B Lottery is and kind of how we got here?
Yeah, so there's an annual limit of 85,000 new H1Bs available every fiscal year. That comprises 65,000 of what we call the regular H1B cap and an additional 20,000 of what we call the advanced degree cap. So put those together, you got your 85,000. Now, the idea is that those 85,000 H1Bs will be sufficient throughout the year and people will apply for them 6 months prior to the start of the new fiscal year. So, April, actually now it's March, start putting in the registration. But the idea is that they can start applying for those H1Bs. And then, at some point during the year, the 85,000 will be gone and then people will have to wait till the following year. Well, the demand on those 85,000 H1Bs has been so far beyond that we've had a lottery. So what happens is during the first week of cases being able to be accepted in the registration process, USCIS accepts those cases. And if there's more than 85,000, they run a lottery. And the idea is that that will be fair to everybody. It will be done randomly and that everybody will have sort of the same opportunity of being selected. So in years where the demand goes beyond that 85,000, we had this lottery, which we've had for, as long as most people can remember. And those numbers, the demand on the H1B has been going up year over year. The process used to be to apply for an H1B, you had to prepare the whole application and file it. So that was a little bit of a deterrent. But nowadays with the online registration process, which started 4 years ago, that barrier to entry is much lower. It's only $10 to register somebody and you do it online and it's a much easier process. So we've seen a huge increase in demand.
So let's just talk, I guess, about the last 3 years that we've had this electronic lottery in place. What have the numbers looked like? What have selection rates looked like for the last 2 or 3 years?
2 years ago, there were about 308,000 H1B registrations. Last year, there were about 484,000. And this year, roughly 781,000 total registrations, of which about 758,000 were valid registrations. So you're seeing a really sharp increase, exponential increase in the demand there. And one of the interesting things that came out of that is USCIS informed us that over half, about 400,000 of those applications were duplicates. So people who had filed with one company and another company or potentially 3 or 4 other companies were duplicates. So it remains to be seen, how many of those H1Bs end up making it through the process. They selected 111,000, anticipating that will be enough, considering rejections and withdrawals and the duplicates, that will be enough to meet the 85,000. If for some reason it's less, then they would run a second round lottery.
And so, with selection rates this year of somewhere between 12 and maybe just under 20% in that master's lottery, companies are having to get creative and employees are having to get creative to try to figure out how to keep talent here in the United States and working. Because I think it's important to remember that for a lot of people, they're working right now on their F1 OPT and they're looking for ways that they can continue to stay employed and working for their companies in the United States, and companies want to keep the talent. So Chad, one of the things that we've been hearing a lot of lately is Day One CPT, or curricular practical training. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about what Day One CPT really is?
Yeah, so this is something that seems new, I think, to a lot of people, but it's not necessarily new. It's just become a much more significant phenomenon, particularly this year. I think with a few things. One, the demand on the H1B and people being creative and looking for alternatives. But two, also with for-profit universities coming to the forefront. The normal process for getting CPT, somebody enrolls in a university, They start their program, they do a semester. Often they need to do 2 semesters before the university will authorize the CPT, because the idea is that the academic degree is the primary purpose of the person staying in the United States. The work is helpful to their degree, but it's sort of secondary to their degree, and it needs to be tied and interrelated. The for-profit universities have seen an opportunity here because the selling point is, continue working for your company, continue working for them full-time. You won't experience a gap in work authorization at all. We will provide you with day 1 CPT. So there will be no gap. And so that's the big selling point with day 1 CPT.
And so, like you said, this isn't a new phenomenon. And historically, it's been something that we've really advised against and cautioned clients about the risks that are associated with the day 1 CPT. Can you talk a little bit about some of those risks, Chad, and who's likely to bear the brunt of those risks?
That's right. So as we see it, this is not a great option for our clients, and we don't advise it. But there are, some employees that are really interested in understanding it. And so the 3 areas that we look at of major concern are, one, with accreditation. The for-profit university accreditation is not always a straightforward process. Once a university is accredited, doesn't mean it always will be. It's something that is sort of, an ongoing analysis. And so that accreditation is one thing. The other thing is making sure that the degree that is being pursued is considered sort of the primary purpose, and that the CPT is complementary of that process and sort of goes along with it, and that the 2 are sort of tied together and not separate. And the third thing is that full-time CPT can nullify a person's ability to get OPT upon graduation. So if they're doing full-time CPT, that can impact that OPT. So there are a number of areas of significant concern that we have. We can't predict the future, but we can advise our clients to steer clear of some of this potential concerns we see happening down the road.
Yeah, so I mean, knowing that there are these risks associated with day 1 CPT, if there is like future enforcement or sort of consequences around this, who's likely to sort of bear the brunt of that? Is it going to be an employer, or is that going to be something that the employee is going to have to deal with?
Yeah, and that's really sort of the crux of this. Who's gonna be thrown under the bus if this becomes an issue? And as long as a company is complying with its I-9 requirements and E-Verify, if they're enrolled in E-Verify, they're fine. So if they're getting a valid I-20 and there's no reason to believe there's anything wrong with it, then the employer is not going to be held liable for that. If there is an issue down the road, it's likely to be the employee that will have a problem. And if it's deemed that they were in an unauthorized work status because the university's accreditation wasn't quite right, then that's going to have a significant impact to the employee and their ability to immigrate to the United States. And of course, the institutions that are doing this, if they're not doing it in a compliant way, then they would be impacted as well.
So, I mean, this is definitely an area that's not without risk and without a little bit of controversy around it. I think it is something that's becoming increasingly common. But in light of these risks, we certainly advise that anyone considering day 1 CPT consult with an immigration attorney who has some expertise in this, who can advise you on what those risks are so that you can make a truly informed decision around this issue. Chad, thank you so much for being here today. Thanks everybody for watching. We hope that you have a great week and that you continue to push forward in your immigration fight. Thanks so much.